At Thousand Island Park, Swami Vivekananda found himself at the intersection of deep spiritual teaching and unexpected local resistance. The serene environment of his retreat was in stark contrast to the turbulent reactions his revolutionary ideas stirred among his hosts and students. Welcome back to our series on Swami Vivekananda's life and teachings. In today's episode, we delve into the 7 transformative weeks he spent at Thousand Island Park. From clashes with his hosts' traditional values to profound teachings that captivated his students, we'll explore how Vivekananda's presence and teachings created a ripple effect, far beyond the peaceful retreat. Join us as we uncover the challenges, triumphs, and deep spiritual exchanges that defined this pivotal period in his Western journey. Miss Dutcher, his hostess, was a conscientious little woman and a staunch Methodist. When the Swami arrived at the house, he saw on the walls of his living quarters scrolls bearing the words, "Welcome to Vivekananda," painted in bold letters. But as the teaching began, Miss Dutcher often felt distressed by the Swami's revolutionary ideas. All her ideals, her values of life, her concepts of religion were, it seemed to her, being destroyed. Sometimes she did not appear for 2 or 3 days. "Don't you see?" the Swami said. "This is not an ordinary illness. It is the reaction of the body against the chaos that is going on in her mind. She cannot bear it." The most violent attack came one day after a timid protest on her part against something he had told them in the class. "The idea of duty is the midday sun of misery, scorching the very soul," he had said. "Is it not our duty?" she had begun, but got no farther. For once the great free soul broke all bounds in his rebellion against the idea that anyone should dare bind with fetters the soul of man. Miss Dutcher was not seen for some days. Referring to the students who had gathered around the Swami, a village shopkeeper said to a new arrival who inquired for the cottage, "Yes, there are some queer people living up on the hill. Among them there is a foreign-looking gentleman." A young girl of 16, living with her family at the foot of the hill, one day expressed the desire to talk to the Swami. "Don't go near him," her mother said sternly. "He is a heathen." Mr. Mitchell, a carpenter who helped to restore the cottage for the Ramakrishna Vivekananda Center in 1948, and had originally built the Swami's quarters in 1895, told the present writer that he had read the Swami's lectures in Chicago from the newspapers long before his arrival at the island. The students wanted at first to live as a community without servants, each doing a share of the work. Nearly all of them, however, were unaccustomed to housework and found it uncongenial. The result was amusing. As time went on, it threatened to become disastrous. When the tension became too great, the Swami would say with utmost sweetness, "Today, I shall cook for you." At this, Landsberg would ejaculate in an aside, "Heaven save us." By way of explanation, he declared that in New York, whenever the Swami cooked, he, Landsberg, would tear his hair, because it meant that afterwards every dish in the house required washing. After a few days, an outsider was engaged to help with the housework. Swami Vivekananda started his class at Thousand Island Park on Wednesday, June 19th. Not all the students had arrived, but his heart was set on his work, so he commenced at once with the 3 or 4 who were with him. After a short meditation, he opened with the Gospel according to St. John from the Bible, saying that since the students were all Christians, it was proper that he should begin with the Christian scriptures. As the classes went on, he taught from the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutras, the Bhakti Sutras of Narada, and other Hindu scriptures. He discussed Vedanta in its 3 aspects: the non-dualism of Shankara, the qualified non-dualism of Ramanuja, and the dualism of Madhva. Since the subtleties of Shankara appeared difficult to the students, Ramanuja remained the favorite among them. The Swami also spoke at length about Sri Ramakrishna, of his own daily life with the Master, and of his struggles with the tendency to unbelief and agnosticism. He told stories from the inexhaustible storehouse of Hindu mythology to illustrate his abstruse thoughts. The ever-recurring theme of his teaching was God realization. He would always come back to the one fundamental, vital point: find God. Nothing else matters. He emphasized morality as the basis of the spiritual life. Without truth, non-injury, continence, non-stealing, cleanliness and austerity, he repeated, there could be no spirituality. The subject of continence always stirred him deeply. It is to be noted by the listeners that continence means moderation, restraint and abstinence from sexual intercourse. Walking up and down the room, getting more and more excited, he would stop before someone as if there were no one else present. Don't you see, he would say eagerly, there is a reason why chastity is insisted on in all monastic orders. Spiritual giants are produced only where the vow of chastity is observed. Don't you see there must be a reason? There is a connection between chastity and spirituality. The explanation is that through prayer and meditation, the saints have transmuted the most vital force in the body into spiritual energy. In India, this is well understood, and yogis do it consciously. The force so transmuted is called ojas, and it is stored up in the brain. It has been lifted from the lowest center to the highest. And I, if I be lifted up, will draw all men unto me. He would plead with the students as if to beg them to act upon this teaching as something most precious. Further, they could not be the disciples he required if they were not established in chastity. He demanded a conscious transmutation. The man who has no temper has nothing to control, he said. I want a few, 5 or 6, who are in the flower of their youth. He would frequently exhort the students to attain freedom. As the words came in torrents from the depths of his soul, the atmosphere would be charged with the yearning to break free from the bondage of the body, a degrading humiliation. As he touched upon this indecent clinging to life, the students would feel as if the curtain that hid the region beyond life and death were lifted for them, and they would long for that glorious freedom. Azad, Azad, the free, the free. He would cry, pacing back and forth like a caged lion, but for him the bars of the cage were not of iron, but of bamboo. Let us not be caught this time, would be his refrain on other occasions. Some of these precious talks were noted down by his disciple Mrs. Ellen Waldo and later published as inspired talks. Students of Swami Vivekananda will forever remain indebted to her for faithfully preserving his immortal words, and the title of this book was well chosen, for they were indeed inspired. One day Miss Waldo was reading her notes to some tardy arrivals in the cottage while the Swami strode up and down the floor, apparently unconscious of what was going on. After the travellers had left the room, the Swami turned to Miss Waldo and said, "How could you have caught my thought and words so perfectly? It was as if I heard myself speaking." During these 7 weeks of teaching, the Swami was most gentle and lovable. He taught his disciples as Sri Ramakrishna had taught him at Dakshineshwar. The teaching was the outpouring of his own spirit in communion with himself. The Swami said later that he was at his best at Thousand Island Park. The ideas he cherished and expressed there grew, during the years that followed, into institutions both in India and abroad. The Swami's one consuming passion during this time was to show his students the way to freedom. "Ah," he said one day with touching pathos, "if I could only set you free with a touch." 2 students, Mrs. Funk and Miss Greenstidle, arrived at the park one dark and rainy night. One of them said, "We have come to you as we would go to Jesus if he was still on the earth and ask him to teach us." The Swami looked at them kindly and gently said, "If I only possess the power of the Christ to set you free." No wonder that Miss Waldo one day exclaimed, "What have we ever done to deserve all this?" And so felt the others also. One cannot but be amazed at the manifestation of Swami Vivekananda's spiritual power at Thousand Island Park. Outwardly, he was a young man of 32. All his disciples at the cottage, except one, were older than himself. Yet everyone looked upon him as a father or mother. He had attained an unbelievable maturity. Some marveled at his purity, some at his power, some at his intellectuality, some at his serenity, which was like the depths of the ocean, unperturbed by the waves of applause or contumely. When had he acquired all these virtues which had made him at 30 a teacher of men? From the foregoing pages, the reader will have formed an idea of him as a stormy person struggling in early youth against poverty and spiritual unbelief. Afterwards, he is seen wandering from the Himalayas to Cape Comorin, raging against the grievances and sufferings of the Indian masses. During his first 2 years in America, he had to fight tooth and nail against malicious critics in order to establish his reputation as a religious teacher. When had he, then, tapped the secret spring of inner calmness and assurance, without which a teacher cannot transmit spirituality to his disciples? One must not forget that Vivekananda, as Ramakrishna has said, was not an ordinary man, but a Nitya Siddha, perfect even before birth. An Ishvarakoti, or special messenger of God born on earth to fulfill a divine mission, the silent but powerful influence of the Guru always guided his feet. The outer world saw only the struggles and restlessness of his wandering days, but not the inner transformation brought about through the practice of purity, detachment, self-control, and meditation. The veil of Maya, without which no physical embodiment is possible, and which in him was very thin, was rent through the spiritual struggle of a few years. People were astonished to see his blossoming forth at Thousand Island Park. In our next episode, we shall continue our journey, focusing on the extraordinary spiritual powers and insightful prophecies that emerged during this period. From his ability to foresee the future of his followers to his charming moments of levity with his students, we'll uncover how Vivekananda's time at the park was a blend of profound spirituality and delightful humor. Stay tuned as we reveal more about this captivating chapter of his life. Thank you for listening till the end. Please subscribe, turn on the notifications, like, comment, and share with your friends. This will help more listeners to discover our channel and content.